Okay, I've got sound. I'm ready to go. And this is a pre-recorded screencast. I have to assist a colleague in getting to some medical appointments. So I'm I am pre-recording this class session for what would be Monday, Monday, October 1st. Okay. As I do that, I want to make sure that we go through some logistics and talk about them. And we have quite a few things to get through here, so I'll move pretty well. The chances are I'm going to run well over 75 minutes. Again, this is a pre-recorded screencast. I'll be sending out messages to everybody in this course that we're not going to meet, okay, because I have to take a call, use some medical appointments. And that's just kind of a ministry thing I do. And so, you have my apologies if you're expecting me to be there, but I am at least leaving you this screencast of you. Well, this week is, of course, Module 6, all right? And I had made some notes here that we were going to review Foster and to review Gorman. So I'm going to go back up here, the Gorman case, and I'm going to go to Vital Source, okay? And I have my textbook up, and I'm going to look for Foster. Well, not the contents, I'll search the book. I'll look for Foster. Okay. And as I noted there, the Foster case, and let's take a look at it quickly. This is Foster generators, and we talked about this as we delved into supply chain models and the transportation problem. And of course, as you remember, Foster, and I talked about this, it has its origin points, okay, plus each plant, and then the 3-month plant capacity. And what we're trying to do is to minimize the cost of transportation. And so then we also have 4 distribution centers, and this is shown here in this network graph. Now, again, some terminology about networks. These are nodes, and this line is an arc. The arrow indicates the direction, and here they have the transportation cost per unit to ship stuff, for example, from Cleveland to Boston. Now, we would use a notation of 1-1, and you'll see this where it means what we're saying from Cleveland to Boston. A 1-2 would be Cleveland to Chicago. A 1-3 would be Cleveland to St. Louis. Okay, and then we see these transportation costs per unit. We're using that model, and as we walk over, they give us a tabular view of that. All right, and this again is one of those what we call northwest corner or transportation types of problems. So you can see we essentially are trying to minimize that cost. So just real quickly, we saw the transportation costs, and you can see the notation, okay? And then we see the supplies, and then we see the demand. So we've got some constraints operating, and here is in mathematical form our problem, our model. Now, the beautiful thing about this is that I can take this mathematical model, all right, and I can plug in data that I have their current, or I could put in forecasted data. I could put in random data if I wanted to simulate this network. And the beauty is I don't have to do a tremendous amount of computation. If I wanted to simulate the network, I just would use random numbers. and to put them in for each of these and see what it looks like. Okay. Now, the authors walk us through this whole process. And of course, if you opened up Solver, all right, and you had Solver, and you open it up, you're going to see you'll see all of that expressed in the typical fashion, where we see the minimization bar, then we see the changing variables, then we see the constraints, and we're assuming this is an LP problem, simplex LP. And then here, of course, is the output, the solution, all right? And what we look at here is we start with the variable, and then, of course, that X11 is, I think it's Cleveland to Boston, and we see the value, that is, how much are we going to spend to meet the demand. And then we see, are there any places here that show us reduced costs, okay? And we see here, by doing some rerouting, we can reduce some costs here, okay? Not significantly, but there are some cost reductions that we can achieve by optimizing this. And here's the optimal solution put into a tabular form that's understandable for us, okay? Now, if you wanted to, you could take these data, all right, and you could take these data and do some work with them on Excel, visually portray them using conditional formatting. You could do a bar graph. So the next step from this would be to take the data and the solution and put it up there. Of course, again, you've got the optimal solution. We've minimized based on our constraints on what we want to do. We don't have to live with the constraints we have. And here's the network diagram, and you could see, again, I can't emphasize enough to you that as you can really see with clarity the network diagram here. You can just about anybody could see this and understand, okay, what's going on. This expresses more for us versus just a simple straight table. All right. And we just we look at, they give us some examples on route minimums. Then they tell us some unacceptable routes, those that are really are just not, they're just, they instead of minimizing costs, they add to costs. All right. Then they give us the general LP problem. And this is, of course, what we would call a capacitated transportation problem. In other words, you're adding that you have to handle a certain amount of units, i.e. capacity. All right. And they give us an example of Union Pacific and how folks use it. So I want to say this about these parts of the books: Management, Science, and Action. These are real cases, real situations where these principles are applied. So you don't have to just take it from me on faith that this stuff is used and it's important for you to understand. You also need to hear from me in the sense that if these companies use these techniques, then we're talking. Then it's important to see them, and the files are uploaded over there, and away we go. Now, we were not only going to look at Foster. Okay. We were going to look at Gorman. Okay. I'll come back here to vital source. I think Gorman gives us the transshipment problem. You can see we've walked through all the notes there. So we'll look for Gorman. And we'll go there. Now, this is the shortest route problem. There's a technique, you may have heard about it in your production course, production/project. I would assume you probably did, called PERT, Program Review, okay, uh, Program Evaluation Review Technique, PERT, hyphen CPM. And that's the PERT CPM. CPM stands for Critical Path Method. So when we have a network problem like this, okay, we have a series of routes that we can. Here's the office at Gorman, and they've got various distribution points. All right, and the costs the miles they have to travel. All right, now obviously the more miles they travel, the higher the cost. Now, I want to just point out something. As I've said every time I do a lecture, these figures, these numbers that we come with are typically going to be numbers that are the basis of historical data, the basis of research that maybe the company's done, or company standards, or let's say, for example, here, they've gotten the exact distance using maybe, say, a GIS tool, a GIS tool, okay, which is a mapping tool, or maybe they've gotten just simply sat on the map and told them. Now, the longer the distance typically is implied, the higher the cost, all right? So we assume. But again, the reason that we've got people who do nothing but study and work with networks is that networks aren't always as clear cut as they appear to be. In this case, that 25 miles or this 25 miles from Gorman's office to node number 2 that 25 miles may include a whole lot of construction, excuse me. It might include a tremendous amount of stop and go traffic. So you have to put some qualifiers in there. And so that's why you have a human being who works with this, because and to establish that figure, you might even simulate it, all right? And the simulation, you might do a mathematical simulation of that distance, okay? But better off that you do an actual simulation where you do a set of deliveries at certain times, and then you come up with those numbers. Folks that work in transportation networking, a lot of this, as you see, is not real heavy-duty mathematics. The software will do that for you. A lot of this is just having a good understanding of how networks operate, and then starting to the work in terms of the arcs. Again, here these round things are the nodes, okay, and the lines are the arcs. Well, okay, and they give some qualifiers here, and says all reads are two-way, okay. So we can have all nodes are choice, so we can have stuff that flows back and flows too. So this is one of the, you say, well, okay, why would it be like that? Well, it's very simple. We might be shipping product, okay, and maybe some of it gets returned, or maybe we ship new product in, and defective and or say perishables, say if it's fast food chains that are gone, perishables have gone bad, you ship them back. So you have to figure that out. So they show us the flow out and the flow in. This is a dynamic network because each node has a flow out and a flow in. Nodes 2, 3, 4, and 5. One is an origin node, so it has outflow only. And as you see, here's the minimization statement. And again, we get the optimal solution. And as we look at this, we're saying, okay, what's the value and how can we reduce costs? Are there big cost savings on particular routes? And we got our objective function value. And this, again, this output is not what, this will not look like what you get from Excel. This output uses that lingo tool that's there available at the lab for this textbook. But if I had sent you there, it's another $250. Okay, so I said we've got Excel. Use Excel, and you can see the results in it. All right. So we've looked at Gorman and Foster. Okay. And again, we've got a shortest route problem. So they walk us through that issue in terms of maximal flows. And let me encourage you. This is one. It's pretty complex, and this is through the Cincinnati highway system. This is a company that's dealing with that. And frankly, I think it's well worth your time to read it. I know it's not due, and I'm not going to give you. You might get a test over some of the concepts here, but I'm not going to have you do the case. But it certainly is well worth looking at. All right, we're going to go back to the contents. And so we're going to move down. We've done this piece right here. Okay. We've reviewed Foster and Gorman. And we're going to look at some cases here that are going to take us in a little bit different direction. All right. You'll notice that I don't ask you to do any changes with the variable. I don't input. Let me say this, as I've looked through the cases where I ask you to manipulate some variables, to insert some new values, that type of thing. I look at them, okay, and most of you look like you've done a pretty good job with that. I would encourage you, all right, to think about, okay, if I was actually doing this problem and I had these established figures, what are the questions I'm going to ask? The first question I'm going to ask is, where did I get the figures? Okay, for the miles between routes. Has it changed? And can I simulate that mathematically? And could I simulate it physically? Okay. And at that point, you're thinking like a management scientist, and you're thinking at a level in terms of your decision making that's far ahead of most people that are out there in business. They just don't stop and think their way through this. And again, this is, I'd say every week, I do it myself every week, review chapter 1 and 2 to really kind of keep you fresh. And look, I teach this course, but I do that to keep my mind on understanding that process of model building, understanding that process of problem solving versus decision making. Problem solving is coming up with a mathematical answer, and then the decision making involves, okay, how might I have to modify that if necessary, and understanding that the result sets, my outcomes really are identified. Solver just identifies a certain point in a whole continuum of possible outcomes. Well, we're going to look at ice cold this week, okay? Now notice that all of these are due on the 5th of October at 5 p.m., okay? And when I say upload here, you'll notice as we come down, I've got correspondingly ice cold explained, and RMC without setup costs, RMC with the setup costs, and Martin Beck. Okay, and I have some resources here for you that I do want you to review. Now, let me say this as I always do. I'm not giving you a test over these types of what I call curated items. But if you seriously are spending the money you're spending to go to school here, or you're an athlete and you're going through what you have to, the practices. And I know for some of you, you endure some physical pain, fatigue, mental pressure. If you're going to go through this stuff, then you get the most for your money. That's all I can say. And here's the way to do that. And I've got you some good resources. Now, some that I think are really worth your while are to take a look at jobs in logistics. I have a careers in logistics and supply chain management, and I've got data here from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And as I've said before, there are some of you who are management majors, for example, who or even I think more importantly, marketing majors for whom logistics would be a very attractive choice as far as employment. Okay, and I will tell you again, one student that I've had, now I have two or three now, but I had one student who we went out to Eat and Break Company there in Shawnee. We did a tour, and the HR director said, any of you who are interested in working with us, please come and see me after class. And I was shocked when I had a class of 25 and one person. And I thought, this is ironic. Here, a lot of them were seniors and juniors, and they're out chasing jobs. And here's the job chasing them, and they didn't even respond. We took a tour of the Eaton facility there in EATO, and the facility there in Shawnee. Now that one individual, okay, the next summer he did an internship in Vietnam in a manufacturing facility there, so he got some international experience. Right, he came back and he got a part-time job with them. Then when he graduated, he went full-time. They paid his way through a master's degree in logistics at OU. Then he got hired by another company up in, I believe they're in Kansas City, Butler Manufacturing. And he's making well over six figures. And I'm going to tell you right now, with the coursework we give you, with working with spreadsheets and databases and the MIS course and the Fluency course, and then this one, you really are primed, if you've had your eyes and ear open, to go into that field. Now, look, I understand going to work for a trucking company is not the sexiest thing in the world. It's not going to work for Google. But let me tell you something. People depend on them. Okay? As I've said to you before, I don't care how much stuff you've got in your cart at Amazon. It's not at your house or your apartment or where you live until somebody completes the supply chain. And I cannot emphasize that to you enough. I wish we offered a logistics major at OBU. I'm fearful if we did, we would get too many students. And I think it's just sad. But there are going to be opportunities out there for you. And if you're willing to start, the young man I'm talking about, he started just as what he was called an inventory clerk. And all he did was he just checked to make sure that stuff was sent when it should have been, stuff arrived when it should have. When the stuff arrived, how much of it was defective. But he quickly advanced because he had a college degree. And he had he understood the importance of what they're doing, and he had an affinity for seeing things, for seeing people have their needs met by getting information to them. Okay, so I would encourage you to take a look. Well, we've got several items here that we're going to do, and we're gonna, and as I said before, I've got ice cold explain, okay, and you'll up and you and consider this the solution file, if you will, okay, and I explain it for you, and the RMC. Now I've got these are not published, so I'm going to take a peek at it for just a minute. Yeah, okay. So I'm going to back here. And I'm going to make ice cold explain, and I'm going to make it published. All right. And it relates to the ice cold case. So you say, what? Well, let's take this for just a minute and let's download it. All right. And so I'm going to download the ice cold explain file. And this is what you'll upload for your workshop credit. And you'll want to go through the standard thing of, saving it to your desktop and then uploading it. All right. Now this is a company that is a refrigerator company. All right. Now this involves a capital budgeting project. So if you've not had Intro to Finance, I have some resources for you. Okay. And that explains capital budgeting basics. And that would be a good place to start. So I didn't just stick these over here, just have something to put in here. I put them over here so you could see. Now, let's look at that file, okay? Let's talk about it. So ice cold explained it. You said, what should I upload for the workshop credit? It would be this, all right? Now we're gonna start with, let's just look at the data. And here I'm going to ask you, all right, to do some, manipulate the data. For example, right here, in the very first part of this text box, all right, I ask you in cell F20 to enter 1. So we're going to find F20. And there it is. And let's see what happens. Now, in fact, I think what I'm going to do, I'll scale this back down just a hair so you can see everything together. All right. And let's just do this. Make this a little bit larger. Okay. And then I'm just going to take this, scoot it out here. All right. If I want to, I can just move this right below, but I'm going to put it right over here. Now, what I had said was this. Okay, I'm going to scale back up just a hair. In cell F20, I'm going to insert a 1 and see what happens with the maximum NPV. Okay. And I'll go up here. I'll click data. Okay. And data. And let's see if I have, okay, let's see if I have to add solver and the analysis tool package. Probably will. So I'll do the add-ins. I've got the solver add-in, okay. This may be just an issue of my not using the visual acuity this year. Go ahead and come down a little bit. And again, we'll look at the data. And a little bit more. Okay. And I want to see the, okay. Here's solver. All right. we're trying to we're trying to get the maximum net present value. This is we're making some investments, and we're calculating the net present value of them, and then we're going to change the variables, and that is our investment plan. And here we're using binary. What that means is we're saying it's a go or no go. All right, we're either going to do it or not. So I changed the new product research to 1. This assumes a simplex, and let's solve it and see what happens. All right, and of course it gives me the report, and I get the answer report. And let's just look at that for a moment. And I can just click on answer report number 1. And here's the original value. And notice what happened. When I changed that new research project from a 0 to a 1, in other words, from no go 0 to we'll do it 1, we can see what happened. Our final value went down by 37,000 or 37 million. So we can easily say to ourselves, no, I don't want to do that. So we'll take it. We'll put the, I put that, I'm going to put it, make it 0. Right. Solver. And I got my answer report. Oh, I don't want this. It's not playing nice with me today for some reason. And I don't know why. There it is. Finally got it up. All right, now I'm ready. I have the new research project. I put a 1 in there and we'll solve. And we've got answer report number. We'll go 2. And there's our solution. As you can see, it went down. So we'll take, to get that, we put that 1, but we saw. And I asked you some questions about the maximum NPV increases, but note the LHS results, do they conform? Now, as we're looking at this, we can do some manipulations and changes. And basically this one, where these are binary, and we're saying I'm either going to do it or I'm not. Okay? Now, when we got that solution, and we'll walk through this. So it's, again, I give you some more verbiage here. And the new machinery and the new product research have the lowest NPV. Okay, so we're trying to maximize it. There's our model. There's the capital available. And let me take a minute and explain what we've got there. Let me come back up here for a moment. I won't go that far. All right. Here I've got the net present value that I can obtain from, this is the net from each of these steps. And here's the money that I have each year to invest. So that's the available capital. And this is our plan in terms of what we wanted, how we want to spend the money. Okay. And as I note there, in cell in cell F20, enter a 1 and see the new result. Okay. So I'm going to put a 1 and see the new result in D16. Let's look over here at D16. Okay. And we'll take a look. And we see that when we go to the 1, we go ahead and do the research project, we get a figure, a maximum net present value of 140. When I take it back to 0, okay, then I'm ready to run this, and I should get the maximum NPV. So I'll run the solver again. All right, we'll solve for it. We should get the maximum. That should increase for us. I'm not understanding why it's not. It may be because I'm not being able to edit it. And I ask you to take a look at these to see if they conform. So there may be just some goofiness that's going on with this thing. Now, as I explained, why would I do some work with new machinery and the product research? They've got the lowest NPVs. Now, if you don't believe me, you can see E6 and E and F, pardon me, E6 and E7. Okay, and they have the lowest NPVs. The two highest NPVs are plant expansion and new machinery. I think what's happened here is because I haven't saved this file, it's not letting me edit. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this file, I'm going to save it on my desktop. And I think because it's a temporary file, it's not letting me play. And I'm going to ice cold explained Harmon and save it to my desktop. All right. And I'm going to close it out, and then I'm going to find it on my desktop. And here it is, ice cold explained Harmon. And I open the thing up. Okay. And now I'm ready to run the solver. And I'm going to put in the 1. Let's see what happens. And when I put the 1 in for the new product research, I get the maximum net present value. Okay. Now I'm going to take that, change that to a 0, and see what happens. And we can see some changes to the right-hand side. And we could use this in terms of what we call capital rationing. And we can run each of these. Now, let's try for a 0 for new machinery and 0 for new product research. So we're going to put a 0 in here. And notice that the NPV is going down. And when we add the machinery back, the NPV goes up. So you can manipulate this and play around with it as you will. with this, we'll go ahead and click data, and there's solver. Oh, it's not being nice today. I think I'm probably just inadvertently hitting help. There it is again. I'm going to maximize. I'll solve. All right. I'm going to see our new answer report. And there we are. So that's the highest value that we can get. The point, though, I'm trying to make is this. First of all, we're engaged in capital rationing. We only have so much. We have these projected net present values, okay? We have only so much capital per year. So I've got 40, these are thousands, so I've got 40,000, 50,000, 40,000. That's what I've got to invest each year. This is called capital rationing. In other words, I decide how much money I'm going to spend on these projects. I have 90, the total here, let's go ahead and run this. I've got $165,000 I can spend over the next 4 years, okay? And I got to figure out how I allocate it. Now you say, could I run a minimization problem here? Yes, you could. And that would be working with, if you wanted to, if you said, okay, this is a risky capital project we're undertaking, you can kind of turn this on its head and use that's the flexibility of the solver. By the other hand, though, typically you want to maximize the NPV. All right, so I'm going to close this. And I'm not going to save any of the changes. I'll open it back up again. Again, you can see it's being a little wacky here. That's okay. All right. Now, so I ask you to in cell F20, all right, to insert a 1. And then we're going to see the new results in D16. Okay. Now, we increased the net present value. But as I mentioned here, look at the left-hand side and the right-hand side. Now we're talking about something that looks goofy. And look at the left-hand side. 50 is not equal to or less than 40. Okay, so we can see right off the bat, well, we've got some problems. So we would want to go back and manipulate that back. And do they conform? No, they don't. They're nonsense. They're just nonsensical. So we say, oh, let's try a 0 for new machinery. Enter it in. And we're back into some conformity. We're checking the left-hand side versus the right-hand side to make sure they make sense. Let's look at this. Now we have a net present value of 167, okay, which is better than the 140 that we had. And notice we're not going to do the new machinery. And notice here that the left-hand side's, well, that works. That works, but that doesn't work. 50 is not less than or equal to 40, and Okay, so we have this one constraint here on the left-hand side that doesn't work. So we don't have an optimal solution. This is illogical. It's just not, makes no sense. You say, well, it works out mathematically. Yeah, but when I get in the real world and start to do this, I'll go, what? So we'll put the new machinery back in. And if we want, we can use it for capital rationing. So we'll put the 1 back in. And we're back now to the maximum net present value. But you've got to check the left-hand side versus the right-hand side. And this is just nonsense. It makes no sense. The left 50 is not less than or equal to a 40. So this tells me we've got a problem. So we're going to come back here to product research. I'll put a 0. And now we're in conformity on the constraints. Okay. All right. Well, that's ice cold explained. And again, I'm going to close this off. And I'll mention again to you. This is the file you would use to upload for ice cold. Okay. Now, again, if you haven't had, you should have had your intro to finance. So you need to brush up a little bit on some capital budgeting basics. So I have that for you. It talks about mutual exclusive, replacement, and independent projects. There's so many excellent, outstanding resources out there on the web, and this is one of them. Okay, and I would encourage you to take a look at it, and it will refresh your memory in terms of capital budgeting, the basics, and the types of decisions we make and typically we are involved in what we call we typically are involved in capital rationing. Again, just so you see this, I'm going to open the file up one more time. And we'll see, and they've got that verbiage where we played with it. All right, here's the deal. This is the NPV that we can get if we pursue these projects. Okay? Now, because we live in a real world, we have a limited amount of capital that we can use each year for our projects. And the total amount, I'll just get that for us. The auto sum. I have $165,000. Okay. And I have a 4-year capital budget plan. All right. Now, as I look at this, I'm saying to myself, all right, I've got $165,000 available. And if I come across here and I say, okay, here's the potential if I do these, I've got 90, that's 130, that's 140, that's $177,000. $177,000 would be my target. In that case, I'm getting a 1-for-1 return on my money. And we would assume, because we're doing capital budgeting out to 4 years, we know what the capital hurdle rate is. That is the rate of interest, the company's cost. That is what we would apply, like the interest rate. or what we call the capital hurdle rate. That is the rate of return they've got to earn. And if I don't earn as much as I could on a similar project outside the company or similar risk in terms of investment, I don't do it. And this is kind of grim because if I do everything, I'll make $177,000, and I have $165,000 of capital available. And when I look for the optimal solution, okay, that is, I get the most bang for my buck. Well, here's my result. Okay. And I'm optimizing. Now, I could sit and play with this and make some strategic decisions. So, again, the data that we have here, we're seeing we're seeing the decision making part. The problem solving part's really been done here. Okay, it's the decision making part. And for example, on the plant expansion, all right, we've got $165,000 of capital available, and just for grins, okay, I'm going to total. So right now, if I spend $70,000 over the next 4 years to expand the plant, I'm going to get a bump of $20,000 in today's money. Okay. And that's why you can see that I'm going to spend the $70,000, but I'll get an NPV of 90. Now we'll come over here. Now, this starts to look a little sketchy because I'm going to spend $50,000 on warehouse expansion over the next 4 years, but I'm going to get $40,000 back. The plant expansion looks good. I'm spending $70,000, okay, over 4 years to get the equivalent of $90,000 in terms of net present value. Not bad. These look a little sketchy, but we're okay. Now, the new machinery, let's look at that. I'm doing just kind of a quick and dirty here. I'm going to spend $14,000 over 4 years, and I'm going to get back the net present value of $10,000. That doesn't look so good. You say, is this realistic to say this should be greater than this? Well, remember now, okay, that I'm spending money into the future. All right, so we're assuming that this net present value has been accurately computed using the capital hurdle rate. Now, if you've had your finance class, you do understand, of course, that finding out that rate of return is not an easy one. And if you're going to use the internal rate of return versus the NPV, you encounter all of those issues that get wrapped up. And that's part of one of the reasons we have you take a finance class intro, so that when you run into something like this, you understand some of those capital budgeting basics. All right. These are inputs in here. I'm going to color the inputs so you can see what we got going on here. Here are the outputs. And I'm going to put them in green to stay with the green and gold theme. Okay, the inputs, these are the outputs. The net present value we get from each of these. These are the inputs. in the yellow. And this is what I've got available each year. Okay. I might have a line of credit the bank will give me. More likely, I might issue 4 sets of bonds. Who knows? I do know I'm an idiot if the capital is just capital. It's money in terms of cash flow. In other words, if it's just straight retained earnings, I'm foolish, because retained earnings typically cost us more than leveraging money. Okay? And so, you say, well, this is somewhat nonsensical, because in this model, all right, you're going to spend $165,000 in capital over 4 years to get a net present value of $140,000. It's nonsense. Why would you do this? Well, the authors have given us a somewhat realistic figure. I'm just going to carry this on down. We'll get this a little bit organized. Okay. And these are totals here, so I'm going to go ahead and make them. But I'm going to highlight them, make them bold, and we'll just do this. And I can do it a lot easier in Copy Format Painter. And then that total. Okay. And here are the net present values I'm going to achieve. I could achieve. And this would be total. I'm going to put total NPVs. I'm doing a little bit of improvisation here, but that's the beauty of this, is I can if I want to do it. I'll use the sum function, and it's going to be these numbers. Okay. I'll make that the total NPV. Now that would be our goal. That would be total maximization. All right. But we live in a real world. And the truth is, we're not always going to get there. All right. And so we're going to use the solver. Now, we can, again, as I said, increase that. I'm going to do the new research project. And watch what happens. I get that total NPV that I wanted. But notice the constraints. They make no sense. And so Solver's telling me, look, you can't do everything because you don't have the money every year to do it. Just look at the chart, stupid. So you can see it. All right. Now, again, this is a much more thoughtful. Now, in this case is very realistic, because what typically will happen is you'll start to do some capital budgeting and capital rationing, all right, and try to figure out, all right, what have we got now? I have some alternatives. I could try to get some additional capital, but for all intents and purposes, I'm spending $165,000. I will get, in today's dollars, the present value, $177,000, but I violated all my constraints. Why? What it's telling me is you don't have enough money based on your constraints. And you can see that up here. Okay, well, we don't have enough capital to pay for every one of these projects each year. But if we add that capital, that means the capital available figure is going to go up. So we're going to have to optimize. Okay. Again, if you've had finance, you should understand the concept of net present value. That is, what is the value of money I'm going to get in the future in terms of today's purchasing power. Okay, that's the net present value. Okay, in other words, future cash flows discounted back, because what a dollar will buy today, it won't buy tomorrow. Okay, and as I come through this talking about ice cold, I'll just kind of just give you, many may have heard this, some of you may have not, I don't know, and frankly, I don't care. But I'll share you what inspired me to study finance, what got me interested in it. If any of you have ever heard of Popeye the Sailor Man, Popeye had a friend named Wimpy, and Wimpy would approach Popeye with a deal, and he'd say, "If you'll give me a quarter to buy a hamburger, I will gladly pay you next Tuesday." And as I watched those cartoons as a kid, I thought, this is interesting, because a lot of stuff could happen. First of all, Wimpy's going to eat the hamburger. Wimpy's going to get the quarter and eat the hamburger. So Wimpy could default on the debt. Okay? But other than that, let's think about it for a moment. Popeye could step in front of a car and get killed, so Wimpy's off the hook. Wimpy could step in front of a car and Wimpy's off the hook again, or the Lord would come and suddenly the debt doesn't matter. You see how I integrate faith with learning? Well, that being said, again, also over there in that resource on capital budgeting basics, explaining the different types of capital rationing approaches. Are projects mutually exclusive? And each of those, and it shows you those basics as well in terms of the types of projects. So I think it's worth your while. Okay? Well, you'll want to upload you'll want to download, save it to your desktop, and then upload Ice Cold Explained to take care of the ice cold assignment that's due. Okay, I'm going to close this off. And we'll go back here, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make the RMC without setup costs. I'm going to publish it. So you should be able to see it. And I'm going to publish RMC with setup costs. And we'll talk about that. And then I'm also going to publish Martin Beck. Okay? So on Wednesday, I'll go through some of this material. And we'll talk about RMC is a manufacturing problem where we have to deal with the issue of setup costs. And I'll just emphasize to you that when we do manufacturing, okay, we have the issue of not only when you manufacture an item, okay, you have to have the manufacturing line and the tools and the setup in order to make the stuff. And so if you're a batch producer, for example, and you have to change your line, then there are setup costs. If you don't, then you don't absorb them. If you're a manufacturer and you do long production runs, or you make the same thing over and over, say cars or electricity, then you don't have those setup costs because that's pretty much done and gone. Explain. Now I have resources here for an order and setup costs, the Northwest Corner method, and then those logistics career information. So this is a good week for us because we're going to see, we're going to use Solver in dealing with a capital budgeting problem and a manufacturing problem, and then we'll look at Martin Beck. So on Wednesday, we'll talk about RMC and Martin Beck. And you have these files you can upload to get your credit, okay? Now, I want to look ahead a little bit here because I want to talk with you for a second. Now, next week is the 1st, the 3rd, and the 5th, all right? Now, as I've said to you, this is a pre-recorded screencast because I have to take a colleague and do some medical runs and take her to the doctor. So I'm not going to be there on Monday, but I am giving you a pre-recorded screencast. Now, if you look ahead at the next month, the 8th, the 8th, the 10th, the 8th and the 10th, and the 8th, the 10th, and the 12th. The 12th is virtual Friday, it's the lab day. There is no class, okay? He said, what? There's no class that week. All right? And there's a reason, okay? Now, we're going to be coming down here to a point where we're going to have Thanksgiving break, but that's going to be all the way down here into November. But here's what I'm going to want you to do, okay? You have 4 exams that week, all right? But I'm going to give you some flex time to get started on the projects that are due in Module 15. I'm going to come all the way down here, and you have some projects that will be due. And I give you the instructions and then where to upload it. So I'm giving you that week, I'm giving you 4 quizzes. So this week is pretty well set. You know what's going to be going on. You'll have this pre-recorded thing on Monday, and then Wednesday live screencast. Now, then on the 8th, 10th, and 12th, there's no class. I'm turning you loose. But if you're smart, you'll get those exams out of the way, and you'll spend some time getting ready and looking at the projects that are going to be due down in week 15. So I'm starting some of the flex time that I like to give you. Okay? All right, everybody. Well, I think that'll pretty much do it. And again, this is a pre-recorded screencast. Once it's ready, I'll post it over the announcements, and I'll send all of you an email and an announcement about this so you're on top of it and you're aware, okay? Thanks a lot. And I'm going to stop the sharing, stop the recording.